Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Wolf, InterDrone's conference producer, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this webinar. Today's topic is drones as an educational tool for young learners, and we're joined by some very special guests, including Sharon Rossmark, who will be moderating. So before we get started, I have a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So we'll start off here with the audio portion. So just as a reminder, the webcast is broadcast over the internet, so make sure that your device's audio is available and unmuted and that your volume is turned up. If you're having any issues, you can always click the little question mark button on the upper corner of the webinar and test out the system a bit and try troubleshooting. And sometimes if you're still having issues, turning off the webinar and re-consult them. So asking questions. You can feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar as it's going on. The questions will be answered at the end of the webinar during the Q&A portion. So to ask a question, there's a little box that says ask a question, and you can enter them there, and we'll be fielding those at the end. So to kind of help guide the conversation with our panelists, we're going to pop up a poll right now. Please feel free to take part. You can enter these two questions. So it's, have you used drones in the classroom? Yes or no? And are you interested in using drones in the classroom? Yes or no? And I'll just give a minute or so there. All right. So moving on, we have a really exciting giveaway today. There's a drawing for 3 audience members to win one of these 3 children's books about drones. So if you'd like to enter, you can put your name and email address in the audience chat box. The winners will be announced and contacted after the webinar. All right, so without further ado, Sharon Rossmark of Women in Drones will be moderating this presentation. So Sharon, I'll hand it over to you to get us started. Sharon, I think you're on mute still, unfortunately.
Thanks, Leslie. So let me start over. Welcome, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Sharon Rossmark, CEO of Women in Drones, and I'm excited about our topic and introducing our panelists today. Before I do, let me just set the stage for our conversation. For those of us in the drone industry, over the last few years, we have seen how drones have rapidly emerged as a useful tool for addressing the needs of business and assisting in public safety situations. And now what we're seeing is drones are increasingly becoming a part of STEM education in classrooms. So thus the need for our topic today. So let me take a few minutes to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist, LaQuata Sumter. She's from Georgia. LaQuata, if you don't mind, please take a moment to introduce yourselves to our audience.
Hello, my name is LaQuata Sumter. I'm the director of Focusing on Me, which is a nonprofit organization who focuses on STEAM through education. And we also work with drones. So we're working with STEAM through drones now as our initiative. And I'm also an electrical and computer engineering instructor out at Albany Technical College.
Thank you. Also joining us today is Kashmir. She's a 4th grade student in Virginia, as well as she runs Kashmir Robotics. Kashmir, will you take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience, please?
Hi, my name is Kashmir. I am 9 years old. I live in Northern Virginia, and I'm a scientist, artist, engineer, cat lover, and no-crash drone pilot. And I want to inspire your kids around the world to learn about drones, how they work, and how they're used to help wildlife.
So everyone, I don't know about your 9-year-old or even yourself personally, but I think she's already accomplished more than I have at this very old age. But thank you, Kashmir, for joining us. Last but certainly not least, we have Megan Salter, who is a middle school teacher from West Virginia. Megan, please take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, my name is Megan Salter, and like Sharon said, I'm a public school teacher in West Virginia. I've been integrating drones in my classrooms for the past 4 years. I was also the educational honoree for Women to Watch for Women in Drones last year, and I was the Cabell County Schools 2021 Teacher of the Year. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. I think like everyone else that's recently entered the drone industry, I think it's important for us to share with the audience what inspired you to get involved with drones. So Megan, why don't you kick us off? What inspired you to get involved with using drones in the classroom?
About 4 years ago, I had a good friend who visited. Actually, he approached me and he said, I have this thing called a drone that I'd like to show your students. And I was like, what in the world is a drone? And at that point, I just thought it was just a flying machine. I had no idea what it was. He came to my classroom and showed my students what a drone was, and immediately they were hooked. The technology, it's like second nature to them. So that's kind of how it all started. And since then I've been building a curriculum with it, and I've been integrating it in my classroom, and the kids love it. So that's basically how I got started.
Okay. And LaQuata, how about you? How did you get started with using drones in the classroom and teaching kids?
Well, mine was pretty interesting. I got back into the classroom at the technical college, and I was looking for something different and new for our students to do. And in looking at new technology, there was drones, and there was also artificial intelligence. But drones seemed to spark my interest a little more. So I captured and got 2 drones. Started out with the Parrot, and then I got the DJI Maverick 2 Zoom. And I was like, okay, this is pretty neat. And as I continued to do my research, I noticed that there wasn't many K through 12 integrations here in South Georgia. So I was like, well, let's see how it looks like in the camps, or taking it to different organizations and allowing the students to use the drones and do different activities. And they were really interested in the activities, as well as the parents and different mentors of the different organizations. So I kept digging into it, and it has been most rewarding. I'm not only teaching what I know, but teaching what I love too, technology.
That's great. Now, Kashmir, you were inspired to get involved with drones, and you've been involved with drones for a number of years. I mean, you know how to fly drones, you know how to code drones to fly, and you've flown drones. So what inspired you to get involved with drones?
Well, luckily, my parents were doing drones from when I was born. They were working with KW. They were inspired by learning how I could help save animals with drones.
Okay, well, thank you. So ladies, why do you think it's important to introduce younger students to drones? I mean, because most people are using drones in the classroom, but it's mostly at the college or university level, maybe even some high school. But our focus today is actually on younger children, like Kashmir today. So LaQuata, why do you think it's important for younger students to learn about the technology like drones?
Well, in the rural areas of South Georgia and the low country of South Carolina, I think it's important to introduce the children at a younger age of the opportunities that are available for careers, letting them see that there are careers in the drone field, not only to just fly drones, but be able to program them and also be the electrical engineer, the person that's going to develop the next drone that we may use in the military. So teaching them at a young age about the opportunities that are available to them is important to me. And and it's something that they normally don't see on a regular basis.
Okay. And Megan, what about your experience? Why do you think it's important for younger students to learn about technology such as drones?
I think it's really important for younger students to learn technology like drones because it comes naturally to them. As me as a teacher, sometimes working with the technology, it doesn't always work out to my favor, and my students are always there and they know how to fix the problem. So it's natural for them. And also, like she was saying, there are future careers that the kids could use with drones. So just integrating that technology into the classroom is a wonderful opportunity for the students to see the type of careers that they could possibly do in the future. And it's a lot of fun. The students love doing it. So that's also a plus.
Yeah, I would agree. And, Kashmir, we've just heard two educators talk about it from their perspective. I'm interested in your perspective. What can kids learn from building their own drone? What would you introduce to the conversation around that?
I think that one of the reasons that kids should be able to do drones is because it's like learning the anatomy of something, like the anatomy of a bird or something, and it's like taking it with a science or engineering everything in at once. Doing all these amazing things just at once. And the kids actually do like it. Something new that's exciting. And in our things like music and art, where it's not as exciting as all of them put together.
Okay. So one of the things that I know that you can do. Right. I'm sorry. Say that last part again. You were breaking up.
I think that it's like all of our subjects put together into one subject.
Right. Exactly. I love that. In fact, that's why we call it STEM or STEAM, because it fits all of them together. And that's one of the things I like about drones is that it incorporates all of those. So ladies, let's switch gears a little bit and move into talking about introducing drones into the classroom. Now, Megan, based on your experience, what are the top considerations for implementing a drone program at an elementary school? I mean, I think everyone would have an idea of what it would take to do it from a high school or even a college level, but I'm sure that you could share some insights introducing it at the elementary school level. So I'd like to ask you from your perspective on that.
Okay, the first thing would be educating people. Using drones in the elementary school, a lot of people, like administrators or parents, might even be like, when they think of drones, they think of these giant drones that spy on people. So educating parents and the administration on what you're using in your classroom. So in order to do that, I take one of my little Tello drones, and I show them, to the principals and the parents, like, this is what we're using. They're completely safe. The only thing you have to worry about is maybe getting a cut on your finger from one of the propellers. So like debunking a lot of those myths, that's one of the first things you need to do. Getting support from your administration, just let them know what you're doing, because that's always something interesting. With my students are flying drones in my classroom and somebody walks by my classroom, that's not something normal that you see going on in an elementary classroom. So making people aware of it, also making sure the students know how to use the equipment safely and to respect other students when they do use it. And also funding, especially at the elementary level, can be hard to come by unless, depending on your school district, but a lot of times funding is not available for you to incorporate drones into the classroom. And also dealing with a lot with integrating drones at the elementary level is not really having as a wide variety of curriculum as what you would have in middle school and high school.
So one of the things you talked about was funding, which I'm sure any of our audience members, particularly if they're interested in introducing drones at an elementary school level, are saying, well, what did you do? Because you're in West Virginia, somewhat of a rural area, correct? How did you go about securing funding to at least initially introduce drones into the classroom?
Initially, I wrote a lot of independent grants, so smaller grants related to STEM in West Virginia. So I started maybe at like a $300 grant, and then I got a $500 grant. So adding all those things together, I was able to build kind of a little mini drone fleet, I guess you could say. So my kids, we have about 10 Tello drones that we use in the classroom. And I use those things in order to purchase the drones and then to get the word out. And then since then, my administration, the district has been very supportive, and they've also purchased me some things. But getting the technology into the hands of the students can be difficult when there is funding issues that you have to deal with. But I wrote independent grants for mine.
Okay. So Laquata, going back to the initial question, based on your experience, what are the top considerations for implementing a drone program at the elementary school level?
I agree with Megan, is that you have to first get away with those myths, getting those administrators and those that are making those decisions on approval, getting them away from the danger that they consider of drones, with them not knowing exactly what drones can be used for and what can be taught. When we integrated it into a middle school here in South Georgia, it was just really educating the administration on what the students would learn and what the students would get out of using drones in the classroom. The teacher was all for it because she believed in me and all the different crazy activities that I like to do. So she believed in me, but getting the administrator to approve it, she was pretty fair with that. Also, I believe that it takes the community base as well, introducing the community to the drones and what can be done to teach the children and what the children can learn from using drones. And as Megan says, she did the independent grants. I did more of the community-based sponsorships and getting the community to buy in to what I was selling. And I was selling, teaching STEAM to kids and teaching them through drones. So that a lot of them bought into what I was selling about getting that, and also getting the products. So buying iPads, buying Tellos, and right now I have a fleet of 8 of them. And that was from getting community donations and even going to different organizations and doing the drone activities with them and getting them to buy into it as well, such as the Albany State University got them to buy into doing drones in their summer camp. And that's another way I got in. And they had a NASA grant, and they still have the NASA grant. So we used the NASA grant to purchase drones and purchase the materials we needed to teach the children.
Okay, well, thank you. So it's interesting that Megan went the state level grants and you went to the community sponsorship. So I'm hoping this helps our audience with thinking out of the box in terms of some funding opportunities. So Kashmir, from your perspective as a student, how can drone education be implemented in elementary schools? What would be your thoughts on what needs to be done to introduce drones to schools? I think she froze. Kashmir, can you hear us? She's frozen. Okay, we can come back. We'll come back, not a problem. So while we're waiting for Kashmir to come back, let's talk about some of the challenges that you all have faced integrating drones into the school. So Laquata, let's start with you. What are some of the challenges that you face? I mean, you just finished telling us about how well it went, at least in securing grants and funding or sponsorships, but I'm sure that there has been some challenges along the way. What are some of those challenges?
I would say one of my main challenge was finding curriculum, and Megan talked about the curriculum a little bit when she explained introducing and bringing it into her classroom. Finding a curriculum that fit the age group that we were looking at using the drones with, and there aren't many K through 12 curriculum out there that focus on classroom integration. So it was like, okay, so how are we going to do this? And so I bought into a couple of programs that were out there, and then realized that they were some of them were a little above my students' head, being that they're rural students. We learn a little bit different sometimes than others. So it was, that was a bit of a challenge for me. So I spent a lot of my nights scratching my hair and pulling my hair out. Okay, what is the next activity you're going to do with these children? And the first summer that I did it, I had 3 different age groups. I had the 2nd and 3rd graders. Then I had a group of 4th and 5th graders. And then at the summer camp, that was a whole nother group of middle and high schoolers. The high schoolers are a little bit easier because there's the FAA curriculum out there. You know, we can teach them to get their pilot license. But when we're looking at the middle schoolers, what are the activities that they're not going to get bored? Because they get bored quickly. And one of the camps I had over 30 students in them. So it's like you got 30 students. You got to keep them moving. You got to keep them active. So it was a challenge for me, building a curriculum that would keep our students active, engaged, and keep them interested. Because just flying a drone doesn't make it interesting.
And that's a great point. We're going to come back to that point a little bit later in the questions. And Kashmir, I'm going to come back to you in a second, but on the same topic, Megan, can you share with the audience some of the challenges that you face integrating drones into the classroom?
I think one of the biggest challenges, just like Luquata said, is the lack of curriculum that you have, especially in elementary. But also a big issue that I dealt with is we're having fun, but we're not just having fun flying drones. A lot of people, they see it and they're like, oh, she's just flying drones in the classroom. How fun. People don't realize the type of concepts the students are learning with integrating drones into the classroom, which is why in my class, my students have an entire portfolio that they put together, and we present it at the end of the year when we do our Drone Olympics. But I think one of the big things is we're not just playing, even though what the type of drones that we use in the classroom are little toys. They're still learning all of the same fundamentals that a person who was getting their Part 107 license, would be learning. So debunking that myth again, that we are having fun, but we're also learning.
And we're going to talk about some of those learning applications. So Kashmir, welcome back. From your perspective, how can drone education be implemented in elementary schools? What do you think about that?
Well, as like one of the specials, like where in elementary school there's like PE, there's art, there's music, those are all specials. Adding like drones as a special would be a great way to get that into elementary school. And then so maybe in kindergarten you're building a drone, learning about this parts, and then in 1st grade you're adding more stuff to the drone, and then 2nd grade you might actually start flying the drone, and then in 3rd grade you might start doing some kind of strong mission, and every grade you start doing something new. So that way, by the time you're in 6th grade and you're going to be ready to graduate, you can present the drone that you finished.
If we had more students like you, just think where we could be as a world, not just a country, but as a world. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's interesting perspective that you're talking about introducing it as young as 1st grade. I love that. So Megan, you finished off by talking about some applications. Tell our audience about your Drone Olympics and including the main goal for the students as part of the Drone Olympics.
Just like Kashmir was saying, integrating drones at a younger age, and that really gets them exposed to the technology. So she said, I think like you can start at kindergarten. I start with my 1st graders. They do actually start learning drones. But as far as my Drone Olympics go, I do that with my 5th grade students, and that's kind of the culminating activity. So that's the 5th graders where we really hone in on a lot of the stuff. And I tell them that they are getting their little mini Part 107 drone license, and they have to learn some of the same things that I did in order to obtain my license. But it is something that we do the entire year. So we start in August, and they start learning the physics of flight. They start learning the parts of a drone, the internal and the external parts of a drone. So they have to learn all these things before I actually let them fly. So it gives them something to look forward to. And also when we do it is we have to have a lot of respect for the materials because they know they're expensive, and each other because a lot of times we're working in a small space. So my kids like to joke around because I'm safety salter. So like I'm the person that's going around. I'm like, do you have your eye protection on? Because that's really the only thing I really have to worry about with my kids. But getting them exposed to the concepts of the physics of flight, the native phonetic alphabet, different types of airspaces, rules and regulations, all of those things. We do that throughout the year. And like I said, we start where they learn those things, and then they master certain areas, and then they're finally able to fly. Then they're able to fly in the classroom. Then we start having missions for the students to do, whether it is simulating a cargo drone. So we might put Legos on the top of a drone and say, this is relating to Amazon delivering packages. How long is it going to take you from go to point A to point B? These are the things that you have to deal with as far as rules and regulations go. So everything that we do as far as with the Drone Olympics, it's real world applications. Like we might have a drone racing league. You can do that very inexpensively with our little Tello drones and pool noodles and hula hoops, things like that. So you just kind of really have to be creative as a teacher, use the materials that you have, and it doesn't matter how goofy it sounds. The kids will love it as long as you're excited about it and not afraid of the technology, because like I said, they're a lot better at it than I am, but it's just stepping back and being like, this is for them to learn and just have fun doing it.
I like that. I like that whole concept of the Drone Olympics. Now, when we talk about applications, Kashmir, you've applied drones to help endangered species. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, I do sea turtle project where we use a drone and we spot the sea turtle tracks. And we follow those tracks to the nest, and if the nest is in an area where the tide's going to get to the nest, we have to relocate all the eggs to somewhere where the tide doesn't get to. Or if it's not where the tide gets to, we still have to mark it, just like my biologists. So we're helping the biologists because the drone can get over a 50-mile beach faster than you can with your own legs, and it's less tiring. You're just flying the drone along, and it's easier to get this done. And then with the rhino project that we do, we use the drones to spot the poachers, and then we send rangers out to stop the poachers from hurting any animals. And with the snow leopard project, we try to make sure that we kind of do something. We spot poachers that want to kill snow leopards, and it's sort of like the same thing, but not exactly.
So tell me about where you've been to spot poachers. What countries were you in that you were using drones to spot poachers?
Well, when I was like maybe 3, we went to Africa to work on the rhino project, and we saved rhinos there. And a lot of times in my life, we went to beaches like on St. Catherine's Island, Mexico. I don't think we did it in Hawaii, but we did it in a lot of places. Most of the places I don't even remember. But I did the turtle one a lot more, and I could remember it more. And one of the turtles I named Tommy for some reason.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you've traveled a great deal and have had some fun with your drone. So speaking of that,
109 places.
109 places. That tops me by a long, long ways. Well, congratulations. And I'm sure at 9, you'll have plenty more places to go between now and the time you're probably 19. So 10 years from now. So Megan, let's talk about, what Kashmir brings up is a lot of activities when they're flying, which is, of course, keeping them away, keeping kids interested. But how do you keep the students engaged in learning the concept even when they're not flying? Because once those drones are grounded, what type of activities do you engage them in?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because we all know, especially younger kids, their attention level is, not as, high as ours could be. But they see those drones over there, like you set them out, and it's just like they see them and they're like, okay, if I do this, I can fly one of those drones. Also, it's a really good behavior incentive too, because if I think that they're not going to be able to handle the technology, I'm like, nope, we're not getting it out today. But as far as activities that I do with the students to keep them engaged, I'm like to feel that I'm really good at tricking my kids into learning. So like one example is like the students might be learning about the external parts of a drone. So we play a trivia game with it, an online trivia game. I was trying to get my students to learn the native phonetic alphabet. And I'm like, this is boring. We've just had a piece of paper where they've had to write down A, alpha, all those things. I'm like, why don't I incorporate a little bit more technology with this and let them use an iMovie? Yeah, iMovie. And they recited the native phonetic alphabet, and they could add emojis in it, and they could add different filters. But they didn't realize that they were doing 50 different takes to get it right. They were still reciting the native phonetic alphabet. And after those 50 takes, they knew it. So that was something fun for them. And they had no idea that they were learning all that. I'm trying to think of another example. Like I said, I really emphasize safety in my classroom. So I let my students do a iMovie trailer where they worked as a team, and they made a little iMovie trailer about how to use drones safely. And they had the opportunity to present that to the other students. So being able to give them opportunities to engage their creativity in ways, learning the curriculum, but also it's a kid-friendly way to get them to learn the concepts that you want them to. So it's just being creative, because there are some ideas out there, but there's not a whole bunch of material yet.
Yeah. Well, speaking of material, so we have three children's books that we're going to give away as a raffle. There are 3 books that I am the co-author of, and they're geared towards kids kindergarten through 3rd grade. And so if you're interested in entering the raffle, just simply put your name and email address in the chat box, and we'll pick it up. And we'll contact you later this week if you're one of the 3 winners. So just want to remind the audience to participate in the raffle. We also are taking questions. So if you've got a question, feel free to put it in the chat box also, and we'll address those in a few minutes. So LaQuata, how do you engage girls to get more interested in STEM through drones? I mean, that is a challenge for us as a society, is getting more girls interested in STEM. And one of the things that we've taken on at Women in Drones is introducing them to drones. So what are your thoughts about how do we get more kids, but more particularly more children or more girls interested in drones?
Well, starting with the STEM question, getting more girls into STEM, I think that's a myth as well. Where a lot of girls don't get into STEM because they sometimes think it's a dirty field, where they're getting their hands dirty. They don't want to get their hands dirty. So what I've done lately is transform that myth into number one, letting girls see someone like me in electrical and computer engineering, and then showing them different careers that are in the STEM field where they're really not getting their hands dirty. They still can be pretty, they still can be cute. And then a lot of our girls like to do makeup. So getting them interested in the chemical background of makeup, how makeup is made, that's one way of introducing them into STEM. But then introducing them into drones, I also get them introduced into drones is giving them challenges. They like taking selfies, they like taking pictures. So the challenges are you get the drone through this obstacle course, and then you take a selfie and you send it back to the person on the other side of the course, and they take a selfie. So getting them that different type of activities, even that's basically putting the arts into it. And I'm working on something now to teach them the dancing arts, the music, so we can show them how drones can be used in arts. making them dance, dance to the rhythm based off of the programs and things of that sort. So getting them interested based off of things that they already are excited about. And he's also teaching them about the non-technical field of STEM and STEAM in drones as well. There's still that business person that has to handle the drone business. There's somebody that has to handle the finances and things of that sort. So doing those type of things as well.
Thank you. And, Megan, I don't know how many girls are in your class, but do you find that the girls are less interested initially in getting involved with drones than the boys, or you really don't see a difference?
I have about an equal amount of boys and girls ratio. And now my girls are just as excited. We actually get really competitive. So we do a lot of boys versus girl competitions in my classroom. And I have found that a lot of my boys don't want to get their hands dirty, which is interesting. Like I rarely ever hear one of my girls, if we're doing something, like they don't want to get their hands dirty. But my boys, I'm like, what is wrong with you? But we do it as a competition, and we have like a scoreboard in our classroom. And it's last year, I'm thinking with my fifth graders, for some reason, I had like 17 boys and I had 5 girls. So that's not normal, but it was all about, the girls winning last year. And but I like to make it a competition. But no, they're just as interested as the boys. And I have also found that when they do competitions, a lot of times, the girls are very precise in how they do things. And they do it the first time and it works. Boys, you put them together, and I'm not saying that every boy does it. They put it together. They want the biggest, the fastest, the boldest. They do it, it breaks. The girls take longer, but it works. So it's interesting the way that boys and girls' minds work differently at that point. And so, but I find that girls are just as excited about it too.
Good. That's good to know. That's promising. Before we go on, ladies, let's grab a couple of the questions from our audience. Here's one. Are there specific curriculums for drones for educational use? What are you all finding? Laquata, are you finding anything particular that's specific to drones?
There are a couple out there that I've came across, and it varies depending on the age groups, number one, and then what we're trying to accomplish. I know that Drone Blocks, I've been digging into their curriculum and really tweaking it a little bit for teachers more so than for the students to use. So I've been tweaking the Drone Blocks curriculum more so for our teachers and for them to use them virtually as well, as now we're in the pandemic. So using Drone Blocks has been one of them. And then the Circuit Scribe, I've been using that one for building. That's learning the electrical components and the electrical fashion of the drone. I've been using that. And so those are the two that I've come across for the K through 12. I've noticed to me that there's plenty out there for our higher K through 12, maybe our 9 through 12, but there's limited for the elementary and middle. So it's more of me building my own and tweaking other things that I see out there.
Okay. Megan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I agree with her. It is very hard to find stuff at the elementary level. I believe there are some programs and stuff out there, but a lot of times I feel like they are too formatted for me and the way I teach. So I would look at something like Kashmir was talking about the sea turtles, the project. I would do something like, let's learn about sea turtles and how they migrate, and then turn that into a drone lesson. So not only would we learn, the history, the nature aspect of it, the biology, all that stuff, and then incorporate the technology. So hopefully it's a natural process. But I have a hard time with just, scripted things to do with my students, because we like to be creative, and also it's a fun process for everyone. And I like my kids to very much have input in the classroom too. So they help me build a lot of the things. But yeah, it is hard to find stuff at elementary level.
I'm with Megan. It's a lot of those things that are scripted, and it seems like it's just not there yet. The script just isn't there yet for us to give out as a lesson plan if we were to take some of the stuff and share it. It seems like it's too scripted. It's not loose, is what I call it.
Yeah. Okay. I want to grab a couple more of the questions before our time runs out. Someone's asking about pupils to drone ratio. What are you all using in terms of your experience of number of students to drone ratio? Laquata? Any formula or
mine is, yeah, I use the 4-to-1 or 3-to-1, depending on the size of the classroom. But my main is making sure that everybody's involved. So you have the pilot, the safety officer, and the engineer. Those are my three that keeps everybody involved. So you have that person that's watching out for safety, you have that person that's going to fly, and then you have that person that's going to fix the drone when it breaks. And then they rotate those different positions either throughout that session or throughout the camp for the whole summer. That's what I did last year.
Okay. Megan, I think you do something similar, right? They rotate the roles.
Yeah, so I do normally like 3 or 4 students working in a group together. And usually you have one person that's the pilot, the other person is the visual observer. We might have the other person that's a safety specialist, another person is the crash specialist, because unfortunately crashes do happen. But normally I have 3 or 4 kids work together, but I also try to have the other kids who are, because we normally can only have like 1 or 2 drones fly at a time, but the other kids, I also want them to be engaged. So I might have one student being like, they would document stuff. So they would take one of the iPads and they would be taking pictures and documenting stuff so that we can watch later. I might have another kid be the timer, another student on the board writing down all of the times for everything and the scores. I might have another kid over here making a graph. So just trying to keep all their little hands busy so they're not getting into stuff that they're not supposed to be getting into. So, and right. A lot of times I make up jobs for them too. I might be like, hey, you're the battery specialist, so anytime a battery needs change, you go for it. And you give them that responsibility, and then they have that sense of ownership over it, and they are all about it.
That's great. Hey, here's one for everyone, including everyone in our audience as well as our panelists. Are you aware that AOPA has the free UAS curriculum for teachers and has grants and awards for school programs? So Marilyn, you put that question, or you put that information in there. I would imagine that you all are going to be hearing from people. So again, the organization is AOPA. They have free UAS curriculum for teachers and have grants and awards. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. A few more here. The FAA has aviation career education called ACE camps for UAS. I wasn't aware of that, so thanks for sharing that also, Marilyn. What was your favorite, okay, ladies, what was your favorite educational drone mission and what did you learn? So Kashmir, let's start with you. What's been your favorite educational drone mission and what did you learn?
I think that it's actually probably the sea turtles, and I've learned that in many books it says that the sea turtles follow the light of the moon, but that's not true. They listen for the sound of the water, and that's how they get to the ocean, because in all the books I read, it's all about the moon shining on the water. But the moon's not always shining. And so we were using a black light, a red light, a red light to see the turtles at nighttime. And I found that it's very fun and helping to direct the turtles towards the ocean. And one time when I was doing one, I followed one turtle all the way very far into the ocean, like farther than I had ever gone, just to make sure that it stayed safe for that part of the journey.
Awesome. And Megan, can you share with us what's been your favorite mission and what you've learned?
My favorite mission using drones in the classroom is when I really like to use them for a positive purpose. This happened last year. My students, this actually happened 2 years ago when they did the first organ transplant via drone in Maryland from one hospital to another. So that was something my students and I, we watched. We're like, oh, here's another real use application that's happening with drones. And I live in a pretty small town with under 50,000 people, but we talked about how larger cities, that could be a very like a viable option because of the time constrictions and things like that. So we researched that and we decided to replicate it in my classroom for my city. So in Maryland, I believe it was Maryland, from one hospital to another. So we have 2 hospitals in my small town. So my students, we made a real like a Lego city of Huntington, West Virginia, where I live. So we made the 2 different hospitals here, and the kids had to go. They had to take the organ from the one hospital, fly it around to like the west part of the other hospital, and land it on the landing pad. They had a certain amount of time as far as like being aware of like all of the environmental factors that we made up and everything. But what makes that really cool about that lesson is the man who was actually heading that project, Matt Cicero, I think I said his name correctly. He actually contacted me because he saw that my students had done it in the classroom. So that was a cool experience for us to be able to like, hey, this guy who actually did this saw what we did, and he wants to talk to you guys. So that was a really cool connection, and they felt like there was so much pride in the kids, like actually having somebody interested in what they did and how they replicated it. And he was really interested in how they did stuff. So that was a really cool experience for everyone around.
That one is cool. LaQuata, any particular mission that you've learned something from?
I would say my mission was a mission we did not plan. On last summer, we were flying drones with the Albany State summer camp, and we got a drone. We got the Tello up in the Raptor, and there wasn't a ladder in order for us to get the Tello out of the Raptor. So the next day, I made it a mission that we were going to figure out how we were going to use one of the other Tellos or my Maverick 2 to get that other Tello out of the Raptor. And actually one of the students figured it out by using 2 rulers and making sure that the Tello was balanced, and they flew it up and it knocked the Tello out of the Raptor. So that was one of my favorite missions, actually. And it wasn't a planned mission.
Well, that was a great learning for everyone. It sounds like. A couple more comments from our audience group. One of them here, someone says, if my company were to develop curriculum, how do we get it into the hands of educators? How to sell to them? Megan, can you help with that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question again?
Someone's company wants to develop curriculum for educators. How do they get it in the hands of educators? How do they sell to them?
Well, it would probably have to be to the districts, like the state first, the state boards of education, and then the districts, because they are just now, I'm thinking about West Virginia, but they're really starting now to implement STEM education into the classroom, which I know Kashmir was saying, maybe, we have specialists, maybe we'll have like a music specialist one day, we'll have art one day, we'll have PE another day. It would be great if they had STEM or STEAM related activities another day where the kids are learning about coding, or they're learning about how to fly drones, or they're learning about, other things with technology. But it's really getting it into the hands of the people who make a lot of the decisions on what we have to teach. Unless you have a teacher. I'm very fortunate with my job because I am able to create all of my curriculum where I'm an enrichment specialist in my job. But it's getting the people who make a lot of those educational decisions aware of what you have, and then going down the ladder from there.
LaQuata, anything you want to add on that, given that you have an education background?
Yeah, I totally agree with Megan. But to add on to that, getting the administration's approval and getting it in the hands of administration, but also making it economically available for schools that don't have much funding. I've seen some curriculum out there, but the cost isn't economically available for one teacher to purchase or one classroom to purchase. So making sure that it's economically available. And then I would give a suggestion to make sure that the company just doesn't build curriculum based off of what they've just heard, but get some teachers' inputs and allow the teachers to give input on the curriculum. And it might be wise to get a teacher to build the curriculum. Someone who's in the K through 12 industry, someone like Megan, who's an enrichment specialist who has that wide range to implement the curriculum, or someone like myself who has the background in K through 12 education. That to me that would help, because we not only do we know how to build the curriculum, but we also may know how to sell it to teachers as well.
Yeah, great suggestion. I'm going to take a few more of our questions, and then hopefully we'll get to some more of the audience questions before we have to close out. So Kashmir, I'd be interested in knowing, what advice do you have for parents and teachers that don't know anything about drones? What would you tell them?
Well, don't be afraid to get involved in it. If you want to get involved or you're interested in doing something with drones, you should. And if you need help, you can always ask some kind of drone profit organization. And don't be afraid to just jump into it.
Thank you. And Laquata, where do you see the future of UAS integration into the classroom going? What's your vision for it?
My vision for it is that, like Megan said, that we can get it more into the STEM and STEAM. If we can get a STEM and STEAM special into the schools, we can get that drone special into the schools, and even the engineering technology into the schools. And I could see where that would really benefit our students in learning more about the drones in the STEM field, and learning about the different careers that are available for them. And they're learning it at an early age versus them waiting to high school to learn, and they may already decided what their career choice is. We can start teaching them at a young age where it's introduced to them there.
Okay. So here's another comment. The Virginia Department of Aviation is online, evidently. They're represented in our audience. They have scholarships and grants for teachers. They say to visit www.doav.virginia.gov for education materials. I would imagine that most states should have something, and check it out locally. It sounds, looking at these questions, it looks like we have a lot of interest. Let's see, someone's asking, I just lost it here. How often do you teach drone concepts in class? Megan, how often do you teach this? Is it part of a weekly session of another class like science, or is it separate like special? Megan?
How I do it with my classroom is we set aside a certain amount of time during the day to do it. We don't always get to it every single week, but even if we don't get to flying or doing missions every week, a lot of times we might have like a quiz time where we play like trivia, like, do you remember what the native phonetic alphabet is? So I try to incorporate at least 15 minutes of it in my classroom every day. It can be something where you do an entire lesson with it, or it can be something where you just learn, a small part of drone terminology, anything like that. But I do it as a full year with my 5th graders, but I do just a little bit each day that I see them. But I also only see these students one day a week, so I have a rotation of students. But it's a little bit every day.
Thank you. Here's a question from the audience. How do schools begin to integrate drone learning during COVID-19 pandemic? What would be your suggestions?
Well,
everybody's smiling. Go ahead, Laquata.
Well, for the summer, I've turned all my my drone classes into virtual classes. And this was actually my first time doing it, but it has been interesting, and it's been pretty good. The Circuit Scribe drone, which is a buildable drone, and it's very reasonable, allows us to build the drone. So I took that curriculum, moved it online into the Google Classroom, and then the Doherty County School System, they sent out the Doherty County School System Gear Up program. They sent out drone kits to the students in the program, so the students were able to build the drones out in the last 2 weeks, and then they were able to send me pictures and videos of them flying the drone and building the drone. So I moved that virtually, and then I moved the coding of drones virtually as well. Drone Blocks just came out with a simulator, and they're still working on the simulator, but I used the simulator in programming the drones. And so that's been pretty interesting as well. So I've transitioned everything virtually. And I'm looking at building a couple of other courses that include missions for children as well, and offering the online virtual summer camp or day camp type adventure as well.
I know here at Women in Drones, we're putting together in partnership with a couple of other drone companies, 1,000 drones for 1,000 girls, because so many students are learning at home. And part of what you just talked about in terms of helping parents with it online, we plan on introducing some assistance to help them learn how to introduce drones at home. But Megan, you had to go the latter part of this past school year introducing or working online with your students. What about your drone Olympics? Did you have that, or because I know that's usually in the late spring?
Yeah.
What did you end up doing in terms of online learning with your drones for your students?
I tell you, it is really tough. It's really difficult. I was not able to find a way to be able to do our drone Olympics, which is, was a very huge disappointment because my kids had worked all year to do that. As far as, hopefully next year we might be able to be in the classroom some, but it is difficult if you don't have a one-on-one device with students. So if the kids don't have a drone at home that they can use to do the projects with, or an iPad at home in order to code some things, it makes it really difficult. Also, I was dealing with this year, even though I was meeting with my students, number one, a lot of them didn't have technology in their hands, or maybe they had one computer for the entire family. Number two, sketchy internet. Like, you don't always have connectivity, and that was an issue too. And it was frustrating for everybody around when you have a student trying to tell you, trying to, give you their ideas, and they can't communicate with you. So it's still a evolving process. I don't really know if I have any good answers for it, but it's a struggle.
Yeah. Well, let's wind down, ladies, and let's start with you, Megan. What advice do you have for any teacher who is thinking about using drones in the classroom? So we've talked about many concepts. We've talked about the difficulties or challenges that you face. What are some of your thoughts on what do you recommend for teachers who want to do this but don't know where to start?
The first thing would be, do not be afraid of the technology. Do not be afraid that the kids know more than you, because in reality, they know more than you. And as a teacher, that's very hard sometimes to step back and be like, wait, I'm the teacher. I'm supposed to be the expert. I'm supposed to know everything about this. I need to solve these problems. But really, in reality, you don't. You need to use kids like Kashmir in your classroom who know how to do these things and use their strengths to help everything work. So as an educator, it's very hard to step back and be like, I don't know everything about what I'm teaching, but understand that your students, this comes naturally to them, and you give them the opportunities. They can solve a lot of the problems themselves. And that's how they're supposed to be learning anyways, is giving them the problems to solve and finding solutions for it. So really just stepping back and being like, you know what, it's okay if I don't know how to fly this drone as well as my students, because I really don't. My students can do it. And also it's okay to make mistakes in front of your students too. Just understand that. And, going in there with the kids and being like, hey, I'm learning how to do this, and just being honest with them and say, I'm learning how to do this. I hope that you're going to learn how to do it with me too. And, it's going to be a mutual thing.
Thank you. And Kashmir, what would you say in closing thoughts to our audience? What do you want our audience, who are primarily adults, what would you want them to know about students learning about drones?
Well, if you are a teacher and you want to do something with drones for the students, then I think that you should do something like make it like you're learning the anatomy of something, like anatomy of a drone while you're building it. And then when you're flying it, you could do little missions like delivering food around the outdoors picnic table on a day that you're going to eat outside and have a snack outside. You could have one of the students use delivery packages and put some kind of rope thing on the drone and then hitch a package to their drone and then deliver those packages around to every table so that everyone can get a snack.
That's a great idea.
And that's the type of mission that everyone wants. Everyone in my school is always starving. So if you could do something like that, the kids are going to want to like literally get really good at flying a drone so they can really quickly get all the food out so that they can run to the table they want to be at so they can eat. That's one of the things that they're going to want to do. And putting in a little bit of competition for them, like who can do the putting out food faster, or who can put out more food, would be better, because then the kids are going to want to learn really good so that they can show that because when there's a competition, the kids want to do it. It's just how it is.
I think that's human nature. We all want to win. We all want to win. And thank you. And so before I wrap up, I just want to remind the audience that the recording of this webinar will be available within 24 hours at www.launchpad.interdrone.com within 24 hours. So again, the entire recording will be available. So Loquata, bring us on home. What are your closing thoughts on or advice for parents or teachers or anyone that wants to get involved with drones in the classroom?
I agree with Megan and Kashmir. Definitely, the challenges is what gets the students going. It keeps them engaged. It helps them keep moving because we don't want them to get bored in the learning experience. So keeping them engaged and giving them the challenges, some competition, is what keeps them going, really. And then to the teachers, really understand what you would like to do with drones in your classroom. What are you trying to accomplish? Before integrating the technology, just make sure that you have a mission and a vision on what you want to accomplish in the classroom, and then you build out that plan on what you're looking to accomplish. And we know that the drone industry is new to a lot of us, but it's a wide open field. And there's so much that we can accomplish. And so we say from the K through 12, there's so much to introduce the students to, but make sure you have a mission and a vision on what you're wanting to accomplish, and then seek the resources. And like Megan said earlier in one of her comments, she said, use what you have. It may sound silly, but it actually works. Believe me, I've used noodles. I've used pipe cleaners, doing different tasks. We took the pipe cleaners to wrap around the drones for delivery. We've used pipes, PVC pipes. It's just things that we've normally had around the house. I've used my photography lights for something. So it's just using what you have to make it engaging for the students. And to the parents, definitely encourage your children to get into a field that interests them. If it's not even drones, any STEM field, get them interested in a field that they enjoy, and don't stump their creativity. Allow them to be creative, because the drone industry allows us to be creative as well. From building a drone to building the challenges, to programming the drones to do different options, is so wide open that you don't stump the children's creativity. Allow them to get involved.
Well, thank you. Ladies, any last comments anyone wants to make before we close out? We have a ton of questions. I apologize to our audience that we didn't get to all of them. If you have anything particular that you want any of us to address, if you would just put those last ones in the chat box, the InterDrone folks will get those over to us and we'll make sure you get a response. View online that offered up resources. I think that's going to be invaluable to everyone. Kashmir, Megan, Laquata, thank you so much, ladies. Awesome job. And Leslie, I'll turn it back over to you for any closing comments to take us on home.
Oh, Sharon, one quick thing. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on this webinar.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Kashmir.
Thanks so much,
Leslie,
everyone.
anything else?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending. I think we learned a lot. This was a really fascinating topic. So as Sharon said, the webinar will be available on Launchpad, and you can also use the link that you used to log in today to access it. So yeah, Sharon, I'll send over any other questions that went unanswered. But I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Bye.